Awesome, thank you. So thank you guys for being here tonight. As you said, I'm Kristen Kepler. I'm from West Bend. I'll let you fill in the rest, but I'm from West Bend, and I actually work as a full-time school counselor, and I work for Christian Family Solutions in addition to being a school counselor at a Wells school. And I'm like the first of its type, and it's kind of like a prototype that's developed over the last 5 years. So it's been really fun to start a program, see how it's working, and trying to help other schools model the same program and get these kind of services into schools, because it's becoming more and more typical that children are not neurotypical. So it's really important that services get in our schools. So it's been really exciting and a blessing to be in the private sector, but I have, let's see if I can do that again. Nope. Be smarter than the clicker. And you showed me, and you're like, just click, and here I am. I'm not getting it.
It's freezing up because it's sitting for a little bit, or no? Yeah, what did we do before? I'll work on it.
Okay. Well, anyways, so my credentials are, my background is I have a master's degree in counseling. I chose school counseling very specifically because I really am passionate about breaking down barriers for any child, especially if it's a financial barrier that can happen. So a lot of times with school counseling, it's free for families, and it's provided by the school. And so it's a really awesome opportunity for children to receive services and accommodations, and the families to have a team member on their team that understands school lingo as well as the counseling world. Probably my biggest accommodations are my, I should say credentials, are, they're my 4 children. These are my 4 children. So they're probably my biggest credentials, because everything you learn in school is so amazing, and like I could tell you every facet of the brain. But becoming a parent, boy, like you have to like walk the walk. And that was like awesome and eye-opening for me, especially because not all my children are neurotypical. And actually, the one up there, in the little tie, she was actually our oldest child. And then we had another child together, a biological child, and then we decided we're really passionate about supporting and helping our community and being foster parents. And our older 2 daughters moved in with us and were adopted about a year later. So I have personal experience as a mother to have a child with ADHD. And I think that has helped me empathize with parents in a whole different way that I couldn't when I was just school counselor and understanding ADHD. I feel like it gave me a whole new understanding as well, and also just a wonderful opportunity to tell people I totally get it. Like like 100%. I live and breathe this, not just at school, but at home. So it's been awesome for my ministry as well. All right, so today we're going to talk about what is ADHD. We're going to talk about the research side of it a little bit, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there about ADHD. Then we're going to talk about treatment. All right, so love to hear from you guys. I want you guys to like, even socially distanced, I want you guys to just like think about things. What does ADHD look like to you? What does it sound like to you? And what do you know about hearing that diagnosis? When you hear my child has ADHD, what are the first things that kind of come to your mind? So I want you to just turn and talk to your neighbor about what does it look like? What does it sound like? And when you first hear that kind of, my child has ADHD, what's the first kind of image that pops in your head? You guys can be nice and loud, talking to your neighbors. All right. So I want you guys now to take that conversation. We're going to kind of group talk it out. So what do you guys think ADHD kind of sounds like? The one sound blip that always comes to my mind is a kid going, huh? What? What was I supposed to do? And a lot of times parents then go, like a very hard, like it's, I've told you 1,000 times. But what do you guys think ADHD kind of sounds like?
Well, because of if you know the words, attention deficit disorder, okay, they can't keep attention.
Yep, exactly. And so we're actually going to dig into some of that. And so one thing I want to address right off the bat, one of the misconceptions as of 2020 is this ADHD versus ADD. So not that long ago, like 5 years ago, there used to be ADHD and ADD, Attention Deficit Hyper Disorder and Attention Deficit Disorder. Now, according to our DSM, which is a big, big book on all the diagnoses that you can get in the psychological world, they umbrellaed it all under ADHD. So if a child is actually inattentive, it's ADHD-inattentive, ADHD-hyperactive, and the third one, ADHD-mind, which is brand new language. So that's a new thing. And so a lot of times, the only way you know that kind of stuff is usually if you're seeking out medical attention and they'll say like your child has ADHD and you're like, they're not hyper, because the diagnosis in the DSM has changed. So that's one of the first things. So it's important because if you hear ADHD and you think this kid is not hyper, I'm not seeing that, just know that it's all under one umbrella now. And so the parent was probably told that from a doctor and they might not elaborate, but we have to kind of transition it. What do you guys think it looks like, ADHD? What do you guys feel like it looks like?
I think there's some kids that it's just physically hard for them to sit still, or they, like, I've had students before that they have to start walking around.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like, you can tell it's not that they don't want to control their bodies, it's just their bodies are just
Yeah.
moving.
Totally. Movement, yes. Yep.
Yeah, impulsiveness, that is not being able to control those impulses.
Yes.
You know, like whatever comes to their head, they're like, okay, then it goes.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. What do you guys kind of hear when you hear like, somebody say like, this child has ADHD? What's kind of your first thought?
Difficulty focusing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's usually the first thing people think of is like focus. Absolutely.
Generally, they're pretty smart, but they have very
Yes. So that's one really cool thing that gets me excited is that ADHD is not a learning disorder, and so many people will say like this kid is failing and they learn that they have ADHD, and literally on a dime they can flip from failing to being successful in classes because it's not a measure of intellect, and it's not a deficit in intellect. It's a deficit in other skill sets, but not intellect. And so it's amazing when children get treatment for this, how their self-esteem will turn right back around. Their grades can turn right back around with proper treatment and care. And getting it treated early is always key too. So yeah, absolutely. Definitely not a knock on intellectual ability or gifts and talents. All right, so let's dig on in. And I'm going to address some of the things that we talked about. Man, I'm like not winning. I'm sorry. I'm getting too chatty. Okay, I'll just click or something. There we go. Do you want to click it? Thank you. There we go. All right. So ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and what that means is basically it's in your brain. It's in your brain, and so sometimes people will say, this kid just doesn't listen to me. They don't listen, and their brain is actually different. It's really amazing when you put an ADHD brain scan next to a neurotypical brain scan. It literally is different. Different parts of their brain highlight or don't highlight the way that a neurotypical brain does. So it's not something they can just control. It's really not. Their brain is different. And not different in a bad way, but different. And we have to recognize that it's not within their control. They didn't choose it. One of the big things that has recently surfaced, I would say also in the last decade, is that there's rumors that ADHD can be caused by screen time, that kids are watching too much screen time, and screen time causes ADHD. We do not have research at this time that supports that. That's okay, you know what? I will just keep rocking it out. All right, so like we talked about before, there are 3 different types. ADHD hyperactive, ADHD inattentive, and ADHD combined, which means both hyperactive and inattentive. More common in boys than girls. How many of you guys knew that? Yeah, yep. And it affects 8.4 of the children, like of our children have it. And so whenever I think about a classroom, I always like want to put that number into like a classroom setting, and I'm like, yep, that sounds pretty accurate when I look around my school or the schools that I've worked in. It's pretty accurate. In fact, some classes I'm like, wow, like this class is like 25%. And you know, it just kind of fluctuates because it all just kind of depends on the children and the probable causes that occurred for them to have ADHD, which we'll be getting into. Let's see if I can click it. Oh, yes, awesome. All right, so what ADHD can look like? It can look like daydreaming. It can look like fidgeting. It can look like too talkative, like they just won't stop talking, or they don't regulate their talking, or they switch from topic to topic to topic without taking a breath ever, and you're just like, oh my goodness. I know that one sweet little girl, she'll say a 5-minute prayer because she just goes and 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 goes. And I just am like, oh, well, I'm glad Jesus heard all of those wonderful thoughts and prayers. So we work with her on time management on that one. But ADHD can also look like poor time management, very careless mistakes. Like inability to keep track of time. They can just totally lose themselves and lose track of time. A lot of times they'll be late to things because they're not thinking about a timetable. Usually very disorganized desks, lockers, rooms, beds, just quite disorganized. Sometimes they can look even just not put together because their morning routine can be really, you're asking them to do multiple things, and that can be really difficult for them without many structures or consistency. So sometimes they can just kind of look like their hair is not done, or like their clothes aren't like put on well or match or anything like that. They struggle immensely with multi-step directions. So anything that is more than 1 or 2, and depending on how old they are, you know, if you start getting into multi-phases of projects and stuff like that, just way over their head. They probably heard 1. Sometimes they hear 2. Oof. After that, it can be rough. And hyperfocus, which sounds like the opposite of ADHD. But they can really hyperfocus on a task, and like I said, lose track of time. Most commonly, if a child is being stimulated, meaning like it's like fulfilling like their need, they can hyper-focus on something, such as like most commonly ADHD children get hyper-focused on video games. And they can play video games for 8 hours. And so a parent will be like, my kid can't possibly have ADHD, doctor, because they can sit and play video games for 8 hours. Now, how could a kid with ADHD play video games for 8 hours? Because that's hyper-focused, and they're getting that stim, which is reinforcing what they're doing. Now, in that 8 hours, what would they or should they have been doing? Well, they probably should have been doing their homework or cleaning their room or that kind of stuff. And that's the ADHD part, right? They hyper-focus on one thing to the point of where they lost that ability to what's called executive function, like categorize importance in their brain, and lost track of that. And boom, they missed something. Maybe if they're a teen, they're late to getting to work. Or a kid, they're just not doing their tasks, not taking care of their homework. That can happen with hyperfocus. The other thing is they have a higher risk of injury. Did you guys, anyone ever experience anything like that? They're much more willing to take risks. Like, yeah, like sometimes you'd be like, oh my goodness, like, what were you thinking? Like, that's very dangerous. odds are they didn't think through, like, if I do this, then this could happen. They were like, yeah, that looks awesome and fun. Totally going to do that. Without thinking things through all the way. Because again, that's kind of like a multi-step thing. All right, let's see if this can click through. Nope. All right, so we don't know actual causes. There's a lot of correlation within studies, but there's no causation. And that's like a big thing to know, is that we think it could be a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of this. And everybody's case can be a little bit different. So it's important that we don't focus a ton on what causes it for a child that we know has it, but treat it in the moment, but allow research to look into the cause side of it. But from what we do know, it may be caused by genetics. Sometimes when children go through the process of getting these assessments, like a Connors assessment, the parent will go, this is me. Like this was me as a child. Like this is who I am. Like, and that's okay. Like, look at you, you're a fully functioning adult. Like, so this is awesome. So you don't have to fear hearing that your kid has ADHD, because look at you, you found ways to like cope with it and handle it and be successful in life. So that's okay. So it can or may be genetic. Smoking, alcohol use, drug use during pregnancy may be a cause as well. There is some correlation with that. Low birth weight, exposure to environmental toxins, and brain injury. Have you guys heard of the brain injury? So that is actually something that we have learned a lot more. You guys heard a lot more about concussion studies. You know, a lot of times people hear it in correlation with the NFL, but we're learning a lot more that like head injuries do trauma to our brain. It can really mess up like how our brain works. And we have to understand a whole lot more of what brain injuries and concussions can do to brains. And one thing we know is that it may be the cause of somebody having ADHD as well. All right, you want to click through? Oh no, this is why I bring these. All right, some research behind this. An ADHD child lags in their brain development by 1 to 3 years. So a lot of people say this child is just very immature for their age. They're just so immature. Like they're still throwing these like really gross tantrums and like just really unexpected, and 8-year-olds don't act like that. You're right, because they're acting like a 5- and 6-year-old. That can be the reason why they're doing that, because their brain does lag in development that way. And I think it's really important to remember that it lags. When it lags like that, you can see it a lot of times when they're like 9, 10, like how immature that a child can look, but it's not immaturity. It's just that their brain lags in that development area, just lags in it. So a lot of times it gets coded as being immature, but it's really actually just their brain developing at a slower rate than their peers, the neurotypical children. On the other side is executive functioning of their brain is low. Executive functioning is your brain's ability to manage. It's like your management part of your brain. It tells you how to organize your thoughts. It tells you how to prioritize. If you know you have to get 5 things done today, you're going to stop and go, yep, okay, I got this. This would make sense to this first, then this. Okay, yep, and then I can change laundry in between all this, and your brain's categorizing all of this for you. That's executive functioning. It's taking what is the most important and organizing it down for you. That's executive functioning. That is lagging in children with ADHD. Their ability to understand what is the most important task is low. So what the most important task to you is will probably not be to an ADHD child, because to them, all 15 things that they have to do today are extra important. So that's why they go from this one to this one to this one to this one to this one. And you're like, just stay on one task. Just stay on one task. Just, you can do this. You know, it's not because they want to just jump, because they think, well, their brain's telling them like, well, you gotta do this. Oh, no, you gotta do this. Oh, no. And so they're kind of like, oh, okay. And then they just get going, kind of like half doing something, and then you find them in your room, and you're like, you're not even supposed to be in your room. So that's how executive functioning can work, and it can be lower with children with ADHD. And self-regulation in emotions is another one. self-regulation meaning their ability to control and cope with strong emotions. A lot of times they can get like a temper very, very quickly. A lot of times when we get annoyed, if you're neurotypical, you have the ability to be like, I shouldn't say that because that's not nice. Nope, they will say that because their ability to regulate, after it comes out, I should have thought that one through. They just go off their emotion and go off their emotion. So it could be emotional high too, right? Like, this is awesome, this is exciting, and they take more risks, and that's how injury can happen. Or this is like super sad, and like they can get super emotional being sad, or super angry. I even see super empathetic, but it's always super. Everything's like always very super for them. And I love that, and I love to find the ways that they are strong in those and allow them to understand that like it's okay if you're struggling with self-regulation in emotions, but we can learn ways to healthy ways to cope with that versus finding more negative ways. So it's okay if they are super excited or they might have a short fuse. There's a lot of people who don't have ADHD that have short fuses, and they need to work on self-regulation. So there's a lot of positive ways to teach kids how to regulate, but it's important to know that that is tied to their ADHD, which we know is like neurodevelopment, so it's in their brain. So it's not always something that you just think, well, they're just a hothead. We know that they're lagging. Remember, they're lagging. That's really important to me, especially when I think about if you're in is anyone in education here? Okay, so if you're in education, it can be helpful for a teacher to just kind of be like, they're not a neurotypical third grader, work ethic wise, maybe not, but ability to work to the curriculum, probably, but not necessarily maybe with work ethic, and that's when we set up those accommodations to kind of build in to help them get that boost that they need within education. All right, do you want to flip it? All right. Would you mind clicking on that? So this video, while it's loading, and there's probably going to be an ad coming up. This video is of a woman who is pretty popular in the world of ADHD, and she herself has ADHD, and she talks about it, and I love the way that she talks about it because she gives it like a face. And I think that's the other thing, is it's important to know that people with ADHD like are still people, and they have wonderful gifts and talents, and they are very smart. Actually, ADHD people are 3 times more likely to own their own business, which I think speaks to their strengths and like speaks to their ability to be like, hey, you know what? It's okay if you can't play it. You can just skip it. We can roll with it. It's 2020. I think that's the rule of 2020. We just roll with life. But she speaks to how ADHD people are 3 times more likely to own their business. And I think when I hear that kind of stat, I think, man, those people had awesome support people in their lives to encourage them and not let them think this is like a disability and we have to like work around this. They were like, dude, you're awesome, and we're gonna figure out ways to help support you and help them see like all their awesome gifts. And so she just kind of speaks about introducing it, giving it a great face to a name, and knowing that it's not just like a limiting thing. And I think that's the other thing. It can be really hard for the first time you kind of hear something like that, like, you have ADHD. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm not like smart? Does that mean like there's something wrong with me? Like, is that why, what? And a lot of times when kids go undiagnosed, what do you think it starts to affect? Oh my, it is terrible. They think, why can't I just be like those other kids? Why do I have to do this? Or why did I do that one thing that was so dumb? Why did I do that in class? And then they think about it. And think about it, and they don't want to do that. They don't want to feel different. No kid wants to feel different, especially, oh my goodness, think about those preteens and those teens. All they want to do is fit in with each other. And it can really start to affect their self-esteem. And so it's heartbreaking when people can go, untreated, unsupported, because their self-esteem can be so tied into it. And so it's important, like when you can give it like a name and speak to its like strengths and speak to the ways that like you can build a team to help support, it can be empowering instead of feeling like a big weight. But you know what? I'm not worried about the video. We can click through. I'm not worried about it. She's really funny though. Every time she walks out on stage, she goes, "Hello, brains." And I'm like, oh, that's funny. All right, so like we kind of talked about earlier, the 3 types of combined. Inattentive, what it really looks like is it looks like a child who can sit very still. And then when somebody gives directions like, hey, thank you for coming tonight, like, can you tell me your name, a little bit what you did? Yep, okay, great. I'm gonna ask you if later on the presentation you can do this and this and this and this. All right, can you repeat that back to me? And the person might go, what? Because they were making awesome eye contact at me, and they might have even been nodding their head at me. But their brain has 6 different pages up and like music playing in the background, and they're just not able to stay on track with what I'm saying and my verbal instructions, because that would be very difficult to give multi-step. So inattentive is not a lot of movement, but it's a lot more daydreaming. It's a lot more just kind of looking around the room. It's just a lot more, you'll see like absent-mindedness in assignments. Like they just skipped an entire back page. And you're like, why didn't you do this? Oh, I didn't see this. You're like, it's right at the bottom of the page. Like it's a whole section. Like how did we miss this whole section right here? And the kid's like, I don't know. I just didn't see it. And for neurotypical, again, you're like, but it's right here. So like, just remember that again, their attention was probably like, oh, what's this over here? Oh, okay, I'm done with science. Put it away. And your mom goes, yep, are you done with science? You go, yeah, totally, I did it, yep. So that can be inattentive. It can be inattentive. It looks like a lot of like missing pieces on assignments. It can also, with inattentive, it can also look like clumsy within, think about like kids that they never put their papers in their folders. It's like a tornado of papers kind of coming out of a classroom. And you're like, hey, can you turn in that spelling sheet? And it's like, spelling sheet. And you're like, where are all these papers coming from? Because again, they're inattentive. So when you say, put away your spelling, we're gonna get out this, that's a lot of steps within there that you're asking of them. And they can just get totally lost and be like, I'll just put it in my desk and I'll do it later. And then later is at the end of the quarter when grades are gonna be submitted soon. And so those are the kind of things that we see with inattentive when it's untreated, and sometimes when it's treated because we're fine tuning that. Hyperactivity. Oh, do you wanna click to the next slide, please? Hyperactivity, that is the kid that gets diagnosed pretty young because their movements are like large. They're the kids who literally, you put a seat down and their like bum is up off the seat and they like work while they're standing, or they like move while they're standing. They're usually like big hand talkers. They're moving a lot. And the moving a lot of times can distract them from their learning because they have to move. When you ask a hyperactivity child to sit still and learn, and you say, can you just please sit in your seat? They are using every ounce of their body and ability to just sit. So when you say, now let's learn math, there's no way. There's just no way. They're using everything within them to just not move because it can be so tough. A lot of hyperactivity kids are very wild. Like at recess time, they can be more prone to get injured or like run into a child. Like they'll just like literally crash into something, and you're like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? And you're like, I don't know where that kid came from. It's because they're just kind of going and going and going. So a lot of high energy that can happen, and their ability to stay on task then is lower. So when it comes to treatment and then combined, a mixture of both. So when it comes to treatment, and I'll go into like different roles in a little bit, but treatment just in general, like a vague overview, just be involved. I think the biggest thing, anyone, whatever your role is within, whatever brought you here tonight to attend, whether it be because you're an educator, whether it be because a family member has ADHD, you have ADHD, or you are a friend or a family or a grandparent or aunt or an uncle of somebody who has ADHD and you just want to be supportive, be involved. Be involved and let that person know that you're there for them to support them. That's a big thing, is that it's something that takes a team. I never, ever work independently with any child with any diagnoses because I'm not the classroom teacher, and I am not their parent, and I am not a specialist in this, in this, in this. We need a team to come around, and really, the most successful children are when a team is complete. When one person is not on that team, boy, you feel it. And so like if you're here tonight for any of those reasons, be an active member, a part of there. Find out what role you can play for that child, that teen, that adult, and be an active member of it. If you can have contact with the school, I'm not sure where everyone's at. He's briefing me on the school stuff right now. So if you can work with the school on this stuff, it is the most important to be active within that child's life, but also work with the school. It can be so hard when parents are not in school are not connecting on this. Like it can just feel so difficult because for ADHD children, consistency is so key. So if the school's doing one thing and you're doing another thing, that kid's, we already established that they have a hard time moving in different directions, and now we're trying really hard to meet these goals, and at home you're working on other goals. That's going to be very difficult for their brain to transition. So being really active with the school and supporting the school, talking to the teacher to understand ways that you can support is really, really important, and asking them for like, okay, so homework seems to be like 35 minutes. What do you suggest? And talk to the teacher about it, because they're the ones who will see how your teacher or your student is like successful with the subject, maybe struggling with the subject, maybe it's afternoon, maybe et cetera. But they might be able to help you build in accommodations just by simply asking, like, how can I support my kid at home? That is like the coolest question I get like in an email. I'm like, yeah, yes, thank you. That's awesome. Because it tells me you want to be a part and act. Behavior counseling. Oh, that's like my favorite. It's my jam. I work with kids in small groups, so if your schools, does the elementary school, middle school around here, high school have school counselors? Awesome. Okay, do they work with kids in small groups? Individual? Okay, awesome. Well, if they do or don't, you never hurts to ask, and ask if you can sign them up for a small group that focuses on impulse control or self-regulation or executive functioning, and get your kid in those kind of programs that do not take a diagnosis always. A lot of times it's just a referral from saying like, I would really love for my child to be a part of this. Getting them in to work with a school counselor or a professional counselor. There are so many awesome professional counselors that love working with kids and building these accommodations into their daily life to help them be successful. And medication. How many of you guys are familiar with the medication for ADHD? Yeah, what do you guys know about it? Because like in the 90s, it got like a real bad rap.
I know, and Ritalin.
Ritalin got the bad rap, yep.
Right, but I think it helps, and I'm here to listen more.
Yeah, totally. So medication can be like life-changing for kids. What? Yes, yeah. Well, and exactly, and so what we know about most medicine is, right, like for anxiety or depression, if that happens, doctors will say, you know what, it's going to take about 3 or 4 weeks. I'll check in with you in 3 or 4 weeks because it has to build into your system. That's for anxiety, depression. ADHD meds, stimulants, you take it an hour later, it's in effect. It's in effect in an hour. That's like amazing. So like a lot of times, that's why a lot of times an educator can tell by 8:01 if a child took their medicine, because it can be such a drastic change in behavior that can occur, or their like ability to like not be in their seat, or to be in their seat and to be on task. Like a lot of times it can be that noticeable within behavior. And night and day is a common thing we get, like big common thing that we hear from parents. It was really night and day. And the other thing we know is that there's a mentality that doctors use called slow to go. They start off on a very low dose, and then they say, okay, you're going to work with your educator, parent, and you're going to see this is what we're giving them. We're giving them maybe a stimulant called Focalin, and work with your educator, see how it affects the kiddo, and see what time it's starting to wear off. So a lot of times the first time they get the dosage, it's not going to be the correct dosage. because the doctor does not want to over-medicate, which is what some people fear, because there was this fear of like, oh, it took my kid's personality away. Kind of like some people would say, like they kind of look like zombie-like. They just weren't there, just didn't seem like they were responding. So a lot of doctors do like slow and low to go, and they start really low. And the teacher might say, yeah, you know what, it wore off by about 11, or it wore off at noon, or it wore off, no, that lasted all day long. But you go to the doctor like, but they couldn't do their homework at night because it's just really, really tough. So they do it very low. Other things that they do within stimulants and non-stimulants is they'll do a booster around lunchtime to help sustain if the child metabolizes, absorbs that medicine quickly. They will get a booster, so that can happen as well. And again, that just takes a lot of communication between parents and school working on that. A lot of times we'll have these, like I'm at a K-8 right now, we'll have these like middle schoolers come back and they just like shot up like 6 inches over the summer. It's like amazing. They're like, oh my goodness, I'm looking up to you. But then their medicine only lasts now, it used to last to 3 and it lasts to noon because they're growing, their body's bigger, and it's metabolizing faster. And so that's just something where you work with the parents on letting them know like what they're noticing and stuff like that. Sometimes parents don't notice it in the summer because a lot of times the kids are a lot more carefree and they're not as task orientated. And so it can be less obvious. And so that's something that, again, working with the school is so important to understanding like ways to support your child with that.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Just because I know a couple different people who, like one of my good friends, a family member whose child, when they're young, like obviously medications, there's always possible side effects or long-term. Like that's
Totally.
one thing. I know there's other parents that I work with in school that like even say like they take fear back because they don't want
100, oh my goodness, 100%.
And then
Totally.
my husband's daughter and also my sister, they lost so much weight. Like,
They what?
they lost a lot of weight.
Oh yes, oh yeah, yeah.
So one of them, my one friend, you know, kind of put her in about
Yeah.
you know, they worry about eating that.
Because it suppresses your appetite. Yes, so there are side effects, absolutely. With every medicine, side effects. So yeah, suppressing appetite. So it's not that their body isn't hungry, it's that they like the medicine just doesn't make them hungry. And then usually when they come off of the medicine, it's like almost like bingey, like bro, they eat like a ton, and you're like, I don't know if that's healthy. So yes, that absolutely can be one. The one thing that I would always make sure that a parent knows before ever doing getting medicine is you gotta like come ready to research and learn about the medicine and the side effects, because there can be so many, because we're all genetically different. We know that, you know, God created us all so wonderful, but we are different. Like how children respond is going to be different. The other thing is at our school, we really encourage like, you have to take a few bites. You have to take a few bites of this and a few bites of this. So like a lot of times the teacher has to help manage the lunch stuff, because otherwise the kid could just sit there and say, I'm not hungry. But we do know that their brain is hungry. Like the brain needs that kind of food. We say it all the time, like, you gotta feed that brain, you gotta feed that brain.
So it's almost like
It's with stimulants, it's like,
you have to keep them on like a schedule, like you have to eat. You have
Yep.
to, like, a certain amount.
yep.
I know
So,
with my girlfriend, her daughter, it is completely night and day.
yes, yeah, it is. Yep, exactly.
And when I wear it off, it's opposite too.
Yes. Right now, like my daughter hit puberty, and she would be mortified if she ever saw this video. They said that she'd be like, mother, but like the whole med thing changed, and oh my heavens, I was like, whoa. Like we had to do the stay-at-home schooling. I forget what we called that. What? Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I forget what they coined it up there, but yeah. So that was like incredibly difficult, because my ADHD child, who has grown significantly, cannot sit at a computer screen and learn all day long without having extreme meltdowns. And it was, yeah, it's so hard. My heart was breaking, and I know this stuff. And my heart was breaking, and I'm in education. So there's not a bit of her homework that I couldn't sit down and do with her, but her brain was so like, I can't do this. I would have to do a whole lot of hand-holding, a whole lot of dictation, working with her educators being like, can we get that book on audio? Like, how do we? And then she would literally, listening to Masterpiece was the book that we were reading. I had to keep up with reading with it. But she would have to walk and listen to this book because after sitting there from computer screen for as long as I could get her to sit there, she had to keep learning, but she had to keep moving. And she's not hyperactive. She's actually inattentive. But it was with everything within her to try to focus on the screen. It was like literally she would just get overwhelmed, and then boom, here comes these big emotions and a ton of sass and just all sorts of like wild behavior that just isn't that's not my child, that's not my little girl, like that's really not her. That's her way of communicating non-verbally that she's overwhelmed, and this is a lot for her, and her life completely changed. So in those types of situations, you have to really think outside the box of how to still meet the educational goal. Like, what's the learning target of this lesson? And how can I help this child get through this learning objective in a way that they'll be successful and absorb as much as possible? I don't want to grade their ability to focus unless that's my learning objective, which can happen sometimes. Sometimes we grade their ability to focus instead of their ability to do math. And I want to do that. I don't want to do that. I really want to see their ability to do math. And so non-stimulants can be like guanfacine. It's a lot of times helping kids that are very gross motor and maybe a little bit more out of control, kind of. I always picture my little sloth guy just kind of taking a breath and slowing down just a little bit. It's awesome because when my kid does not like how she feels when she's not on her medicine. She says, I don't like it. I don't like it. I can't focus, and that I don't like it. And she knows that she gets in a whole lot more like conflict with peers or parents because she's just not thinking before speaking. So the blessing is a lot of times when kids have a successful treatment, they are so happy with their treatment that it's really powerful for them that they not only are in treatment for it in multiple ways, but they bought into their treatment and they want to be actively involved, which they should be at a certain age. They should be actively involved.
My 15-year-old granddaughter is worried about taking the Ritalin, which she's had for several years. I forgot how many years. The important problem is that she's been diagnosed with anxiety too, which came from her mom's side, and the hyperactivity from her father. Now, the thing is, so as long as you say that everyone usually likes the Ritalin and feels so much terrific.
Sometimes, yeah.
How, I was wondering what percentage is she in the small percentage that is so anxious? She says, what's the lesser of two evils?
Yeah, so her situation's a little different. I'm going to cover that because that's comorbid. She's got ADHD comorbid, meaning like blended with something else, like anxiety, which I'm totally going to cover that, and I'm totally going to cover, you asked kind of about the side effect side of medicine, but I'm going to play like a little bit of devil's advocate here in a church, I guess. So, but on what happens when kids don't take it, because I've worked at the high school level, and a lot of my children that didn't take their medicine, God bless them, they just got in a whole lot of trouble. And I don't mean just like trouble like not doing their schoolwork, but like legal trouble, substance trouble, because a lot of times it gets blended in with self-esteem, and they start to struggle, and they can fall. They're impulsive. We've covered that, right? They're impulsive, and they do things that they wouldn't normally do, and it can lead to substance abuse, and that does happen. That does happen. So sometimes you have to kind of weigh out the options. Do I want my child to have low self-esteem, maybe lower appetite, and I have to help regulate it, or what could be the long-term effects of this? How greatly could this impact her education, her life, her self-esteem? So you kind of got to weigh it out. The cool part is it's in and out of your system very quickly, as you guys have learned. So you can try it, and if you're like, this isn't working, go back to your doctor and say, Focalin is not working. My child is saying they feel weird. They don't like the way they feel. tell that to your doctor, because every medicine does not react the same. There's actually a really cool test out there right now that doctors can give. It's like a genetic test. They swab my daughter's mouth, and they can tell you how your body responds to medicine. There's like a category of greens where your body really responds positively to those. Category of yellows, your body's like, eh, and reds. And let me tell you, I've had kids that didn't do the swab until like after, and like they were on a medicine. I was like, this is not working. Like this is bad, because it ended up being their red category for their brain and their genetics. So and sometimes parents will say, well, I have ADHD and this is medicine I took, so this is medicine I want to give my kid. You forget that your kid is half another person. So that part of it can play into it too. So you can get a test like that too. So if she's saying, I don't really like the way I feel with Ritalin.
What did you say the name of it?
It's like a swab test where they test to see how your body reacts to different medicine.
Okay.
And the other thing is for her, specifically, you have to find out if she's in a category called SSRI or non-SSRI. And then there's multiple in each, because sometimes one medicine doesn't play nicely with your body, but others within that category do. And I would try a different one or try balancing the amounts. And that's where, like, man, thank goodness for doctors, because that's quite the balancing act that is above my pay grade. But it's always important to be giving that feedback back to the doctor, because if your child's advocating for that they don't feel right on it, then that buy-in isn't going to be there for their treatment, especially when they're old enough to articulate that. Like my daughter will walk in and be like, this is not working, because by the time language class comes around, no, I'm not listening. Okay, well, we can say that in a better way to the doctor next time. But she's very passionate about when she doesn't like how she feels when she's not on it, because she knows that she comes home with so much more homework, and she's overwhelmed because she did not listen to the lesson, and then she has to be retaught it at home while her sisters are playing already. So that can be very overwhelming for her, and she just wants to like follow the pattern of, wow, when I was successful, that's the pattern I want to be on. And so when she gets kind of derailed, she wants to hop back on. So that's positive. All right, do you want to flip it real quick? Sorry. Oh, you can skip. No, we can skip this. You can skip that one. All right. Okay, so if your child, not educator-wise, has ADHD, seek first to understand. Research, research, research. I think that's so important. There's so many rumors out there with ADHD that I think it's really important you debunk them or you prove them. Either way, but educate yourself is so important. Coming here tonight is a huge step on learning more. Even if you listen to this hour presentation and you literally only take away one thing I said, that's okay, because you learned something that you can bring back into your life and bring back in. And yeah, fact check everything I said, please, because that's just awesome research. But it's really important that you take things back to your life, because ADHD hyperactivity can look very different. Like you can have 3 kids in a class have ADHD hyperactivity, and they present their presentation of ADHD can be so different. And for so many different reasons. So I don't like to put kids into a box of, well, they have ADHD, so here are the boom, 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 standard accommodations we can give for that one. No, every child is going to look a little bit differently depending on their personality, depending on their gifts and abilities, depending on their intellectual abilities, depending on if they're diagnosed with anything else. So we don't just want to put them into boxes. Kid, form a team. That is like my big, big thing. You got to come at this from all angles. Teachers are just wealth of knowledge. You got to use them and like love your teacher. And I know it can be really hard sometimes to choke down some of this like I just feel like I'm getting all this like negative feedback or something like that. Find a system then that you get positive and I would say constructive ways to like fit in, because sometimes if you're just hearing the negative, it can be as a parent and it can make you feel like, what am I doing wrong? I'm trying to do my best. I'm trying to support my child the best way possible. So finding a way to celebrate their successes. Like I emailed a parent just on Monday and I was like, hey, your kid was not listening in class and then walked up during guided reading and started talking to another kid, and the teacher said, no, go sit down and go back to doing writer's workshop. And the kid just mean mugged that teacher the whole way back, put his head down and just cried. And the aide came over and said, do you need to take a break? How can I help you? And he said, I just need a minute. And he self-regulated without any kind of like outburst or anything. And I was like, oh my goodness, you guys, this is awesome. He just self-regulated all on his own. And it was great. And he was allowed to express himself in a safe way. And that was huge. And that parent needs to hear that. The parent doesn't need to hear, yeah, your kid got up during guided reading and was chit-chatting. No, they were successful in self-regulating their emotions, and that's amazing. That's amazing, because that's what you're looking for, them to slowly change their behavior, which we know takes time and consistency. All right, see the gifts in their brain. My child with ADHD is super gifted at art. Super gifted at art. Like, she can do art forever and ever and ever. Pros and cons, because she's inattentive, so guess what that means she does on her worksheets? Doodle. Doodler. Super big doodler. I could, murals all over. So blessing, because then we try to find positive ways, like finish your task, and then you can do this. Finish your task, and then you can do this. Another thing that I've seen, do you guys know that famous swimmer, Michael Phelps? Do you guys know he's got ADHD? Do you know why he started swimming? Because his mom's like, let's get some energy out. He's an Olympic swimmer. He's like amazing. He's like seriously one of the most decorated swimmers. And you know what? He channeled that into a passion, into success, and just so many amazing things. And I like love when I hear that like famous people that have ADHD, because my daughter's like, yeah, I got that too. Yeah. I'm like, that's right. Good. Be proud of it. Be proud of it, right? Because it's not something you need to think that there's something wrong with me. You can use your abilities and gifts still to serve out God's purpose for you, still to serve others. And I think that's really important, that you help them frame it in a way that's positive. You can frame everything in a positive or a negative. And if you're going to spend life looking through things through a negative lens, that's going to be deep, dark, gloomy. Or you can say, you know what, we're going to work with this. We got this. We're going to work with this, and frame it in a different way. Tools, encourage them to use their tools. I'm going to go over to, I brought a ton of things with me that I use every day for many, many kids. So encouraging them to use their tools, whether they're visible tools or their techniques that they learn from their counselors. Structure and consistency. I cannot tell you how hard morning routines are for some of my ADHD young kids. They have to have, parents will post, I will walk parents through, in your bathroom, please post your bathroom routine. Okay, in the bedroom, post the bedroom routine, what that looks like. And then in the kitchen, post what that looks like. Because they'll walk into the bathroom and then they'll get distracted by the brush. And then they're like, no, I'm here to brush my teeth. I'm like, wait a minute. They floss? That's not supposed to be here. And then next thing you know, they're not on their routine. So a lot of times we will have the parents post it right on the mirror, and it's laminated. So that way they can just kind of, if it's a young kid, they like love getting validated by like checking it off, and they can just erase it the next day. And they can do that in all those different environments. So a lot of times for my ADHD children, when they walk into their classroom, on their desk is a visual schedule, or their visual morning routine, what they need to do. And again, it can just be checked off with, because it's laminated, what they got through. And that's awesome, because guess what? Then they're doing it independently instead of being coached through it. Not everybody can independently start that way. Sometimes you have to teach and coach and teach and coach. But the idea would be to scaffold it and then bring it back. And brain breaks for homework and smooth transitions. How many of you guys know what brain breaks are? Oh man, these are like my child. So like brain breaks are a time that like when your kid is losing their stamina in doing their homework, and they clearly are timing out, and a lot of times visibly, like my kid will like literally start to just bend over, or like, that's when they need to move. And so my wonderful preteen is not into the brain breaks that I do for younger kids. So her brain breaks look differently. A lot of times I'll be like, why don't you just go play outside for a little bit, run around. We'll do like a little scavenger hunt, or sometimes she loves to walk her dogs, so she'll go on, walk her dogs, and come back and get back to it. But she has to move. She has to step away from that critical thinking, let her brain sort and file, and then she can come back to the task. For my younger kids, a lot of times we do these more elaborate movement breaks. Well, the teachers, at the beginning of the school year, we try to always mix it up. We try to find silly ways to do brain breaks for younger kids. Like there's popsicle sticks that we made, and it would be like, the kid will pull it out and he'll say like, waddle like a penguin. So like literally all the kids will like walk around the classroom like, and they always make these noises. I'm like, do penguins really make that noise? I don't know, but they always do that, you know. Or it'll say like, you know, we're gonna pretend we're walking on the moon. So we'll be like, whoa, whoa. And the kids just love it, and they kind of get their wiggles out, and they get their gross motor going because their brain just needs them to move to file. And they actually need it much sooner than a neurotypical child. So a lot of children need brain breaks to transition, but if you can think of an ADHD child and how much more they need it to help their brain get back to a place where they're not going to get frustrated, which would then they would want to shut down. So it's really important that they do, and when they do, not just stay at the table, but like move away from the homework table and do something. Do something that they love, do something they're passionate about. But then smooth transitions back. This one's really hard. So I do not recommend a brain break being a video game. We don't have video games in our house because they can be very addicting. But a lot of times if you do, sometimes it can be hard to peel. If there's really like something, it can be hard to peel them away. So making sure smooth transitions. A lot of times we'll set a timer. Like you have 10 minutes. You get to do whatever you want for 10 minutes. But when the timer's at 1 minute, I'm gonna call for you. You got 1 minute. Repeat after me. What do you have? 1 minute. And then I'll come and be like, all right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Put it down, freeze. And then we come back to do homework. So we have to help her brain understand that the transition is coming. The transition is coming. Transitions are very hard for ADHD kids because they just want to finish that task. And they just need time to prepare themselves. Because remember, emotional regulation, that self-regulation, they need time. So they need that accommodation to hear you say, 1 minute left. Let's count it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sometimes some of our classes have like a bell they ding to let kids know that they've got 1 minute. And then like frogs come on when it's done. So you can do different kind of auditory cues as well that way to help them transition. Do you want to hit that? Thank you. All right, so teachers, think outside the box with accommodations. Man, and like I feel like teachers are some of the most resilient, crafty people because they can have a small budget and they can still do tons of things with it. And so it's awesome. So teachers, think outside of the box with ways to accommodate a child. Don't get stuck on, well, I've never done that before, or I don't know if we can do that. Think about like, oh, this is an opportunity to try something new. And if it fails, okay, that's okay. That's okay. I have tons of accommodations that fail. And some of them are tried and true. And I'm like, well, that really did not work out for that kiddo. And then we try something else. But there's brain breaks that we do in the classroom through Go Noodles, a website. When we were online, distance learning, that's what we called it, distance learning. The teacher would give us different Go Noodles to do. And it was awesome. It was movement. It was silly. It was engaging. And it got the kids moving so that way they could keep going on their tasks. If I don't have that, I'll do wall push-ups with the kids, where they literally just lean up against a wall. And I'll have them do push-ups. A lot of times they love it. Like they're like, hey, Ms. Kepler, how many have you done? I'm like, oh, I've only done 10. They're like, 20. Like, they love beating a teacher at something like that. So that also just helps get some of that extra energy out. I'm in a floor course, and I'm getting my floor course this next week. But a woman in our school has a Cricut. Do you guys know what a Cricut is? It's like a machine that can cut out vinyl. And I designed a course along the floor of my office. And it's got like a log that the kids are going to balance on, and then it's like a spin, so they're going to spin, and then there's lily pads, and they pretend to hop from lily pad to lily pad, but it's a whole movement thing leading out of the door of my room. And it just allows for that movement to happen. A lot of schools have been putting them in the hall. I see pros and cons to that. I cannot imagine like running PBIS if your educator's running that positive behavioral support system where you tape down the hall, say, we walk on the right this way on the blue line and the green line, and then having an obstacle course there, because you know a kindergartner is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm doing that obstacle course. So I don't know about the hallway, but if you can find, if there's a room that you guys have for EBD, if you guys have any OT rooms or anything like that, creating like that little obstacle course is awesome for kids just to get that break to do that kind of stuff and do it several times. Sometimes we time it, sometimes we do it backwards. Sometimes I'll ask them like, what would they add into this? And now we actually have we'll have the visual on the floor because the mom is gonna just take the vinyl and put it onto the floor of my office. So it's gonna be really exciting. But if you just searched floor course, brain break in YouTube, CNN has covered them. You'll see tons of different ones that you can do. And it really just takes a Cricut and vinyl, and you can do it for like $10 in a classroom. So it's really, really cheap that way, but it can be really meaningful, and it can also be an incentive. Like if you can complete this task, then we're gonna go do the movement course. And so that can also be a motivator that way. Warning, prior transition. I think I spoke to that towards the parenting side too. Verbal and nonverbal cues to focus. This is really, really big. A lot of my ADHD children are not auditory learners. So they're not always gonna pick up when you warn them verbally. A lot of times having a nonverbal or a signal to them to like, are you paying attention? Instead of saying like, Billy, hey, focus up here, right? And calling him out in front of his peers and then he's like super embarrassed. Just having that signal that Billy knows, this means you're not paying attention. This means you're not paying attention, I'm gonna have you focus up. Or a lot of times we'll have like the circulation, the tap on the desk to help them understand like focus up, focus up. I'll even have to do that sometimes at home, like where are we at, where are we at? But that nonverbal is important for them to start to look for and cue them that way. And as always, connect with parents, school counselor, find more ways to support them. But the last one is a cool down spot for that self-regulation, that emotional side. When they get those strong emotions, to have a place in your classroom that they can calm down. So we used these Thrive in Action Team cards that cost, Thrive will give you, if you're a member of there, they'll give you $250 on this like little credit card thing. And we bought all the supplies to make a calm down corner in every classroom. And so when someone's feeling those strong emotions and they need to regulate, it's filled with a whole bunch of tools. Some of the tools that are up here in our cool down spots, but it gives the child manipulatives to use and a safe place to go. So a lot of times when kids are feeling that way, they'll run away or they'll go under a table because they're just overwhelmed. And so giving them a safe place to go to where they're not running out of a room or under a table, giving them a safe place to go is a really big thing. Teaching them that it's okay to have those big emotions, and let's find healthy ways to handle it. Plus, a lot of times, if it's in the classroom, they're not losing instruction time. That's the other thing. When we remove kids from the classroom, they're automatically losing instruction time, and I want to keep kids in the classroom as much as possible, staying engaged and learning. So having a calm down spot in every classroom is really, really important to me, that they get every ounce of the curriculum. All right, you can click. All right, so up here I've got, I'll let you guys move because my goodness gracious, I'm talking about ADHD and not allowing you guys to move. I brought with me a whole bunch of manipulatives that I use. So I'm just gonna quickly run through them and you can come up here and look. I've got a bunch of books that I use in classroom lessons because I teach social skills in a classroom, because let's just be honest, all kids need to know a lot of social skills that we in America have as cultural based things. And also it's really important, like first grade teacher is just like tattling. That's not categorized with any disorder. That's just something like we gotta just teach kids how to like solve their problems. So I've got books up here that I use within classrooms to help self-regulate, to study, to learn not to blurt, or learn that like the impact of your words, like you can't say that, you just can't say stuff like that. Even all the way to my favorite, my mouth is a volcano, like the child that just like blurts and explodes like lava. And so now it's really cool because sometimes that's our cue word in a classroom, like volcano. And they're like, oh yeah, it is, it's a volcano. So that can also be a really fun cue, and it's a really fun book, and it's silly, and you're like, Lewis. Like the kids are always like, this kid's not getting it. And I'm like, yeah, but we'll work with them. We'll work with Lewis in the book. So it's a really fun book that kind of goes through some of that. And then the last book is Be Where Your Feet Are. It's a lot for my older 5th and 6th graders where they need to be present in what they're doing and not be thinking about these tasks and this task, but literally where your body is where your mind needs to be, and teaching them to like stay present on the task that they're working on. Yes, this goes on top of a pencil. It's a chess piece. This is for any of my kids that need oral stim. And they chew on it, and it goes on top of a pencil. It stops the child from eating a pencil, which often happens because they will bite it so much, or they'll bite the eraser off. And this also is healthy because I haven't had a kid bite through it, but I don't want a kid biting their pencils and breaking and biting through that kind of stuff to get that stimulation because they're trying so hard to focus. The other reason I put this on a pencil is a kid is a tapper. Anyone have a kid that's like a tapper? And it can just be like kind of like if a kid like It's always like a kid sitting next to them that's like, why do they do that? This can stop the noise of the tap. So they can still move their utensil, their pen, pencil, whatever it might be. I guess a skinny highlighter too. And they can still tap it. Amazon. Kids will use Play-Doh. Older kids, do not give this to a little kid. They will totally not pay attention. But they'll use Play-Doh. They'll use it in their hand kind of to squeeze it, mold it, a lot of times under their desk just to help keep their attention on what they're doing. Has anyone seen these before? These are exercise bands. Also awesome to put on school chairs to allow their feet to move. So you can stick it on a school chair, or like me, if you were in a shutdown in the spring, put it on your kitchen table chair. And your kid can put their feet behind it and push it like an exercise to help them move quietly. They can kind of like, if it's behind it, they just like kind of bounce their legs off of it. But again, it's all much more silent. And it allows them to kind of get that movement still while sitting and attending. These are big for my kids that are learning to read and have ADHD. A lot of times their eyes will bounce from line to line when they're trying to read. And this even happens to my middle schooler when she's tired. It highlights the word, the line that they're on to help their eyes track it. Because again, we know that our ADHD learners are very unlikely auditory learners. So this is a visual cue of where they're supposed to be and how to follow along. It also chunks and breaks down the book significantly. So I do blue and yellow because blue is supposed to be cooler for eyes, but sometimes yellow helps it bounce off the page. Kids will hold this, squeeze it. You have these in calm down corners. I brought with me my tape. I will tape off a square for a child that needs to move because not every child can sit. And so what we do is we put a child that needs to move a little bit, we'll tape a square around their desk and say, this is your personal space bubble. And you can do whatever you need to do. If you need to stand, if you need to just kind of lean to listen and do this. If that helps you learn, you just can't go outside your bubble because we don't want like Billy like out in the aisle, like doing a jumping jack to move. We want him to stay in a square. So we'll tape off the area and say, yeah, you can stand in this area. If that helps you learn, you can stand. Obviously, where does Billy's desk need to be then? In back. And don't put an ADHD child by the door or a window. Oh man, it's a nightmare. Another just kind of squeeze thing. It's a different stem. It's a harder stem because it's much harder. This is one for a lot of my younger kids. I got this off of Amazon, but now I have some moms that said, I can sew something like that for you. So find your resources and find your people that help. But so there's bean bags on the side. So it's not weighted, which is a lot of people think it's weighted, but it's not. It's not meant to be weighted. It's meant to stabilize it on their lap because in here is a marble. There's a slight little obstacle course that helps their little fingers stay in their lap and not in their nose or their mouth or wherever else they're putting their fingers. That's not allowing them and distracting them from learning. Because a lot of times, sometimes their movements get too big that they are distracted by their own movements. So a lot of times if you can just give them something like this, it can help them, and it's on their lap. So they'll use this quite regularly. This is something I use in small group, but if I feel like a kid needs a break, I will use this to kind of help process, like, what is self-control, and like, why do we need breaks, and kind of stuff like that, but to help them get some of their movement out. And so I just write questions on a little beach ball, whatever it might pertain to. Velcro. I will take the soft side of Velcro and I will tape it under a student's desk. And nobody sees it. And then their hands are under their desk and in their lap. And they can touch the Velcro underneath their desk with nobody knowing that that's what they're needing to keep their hands moving. And they get that stimulation that they need. And they're still learning at their desk. And it's awesome because then people aren't like, hey, why do you have a squishy in your hands? Hey, are you allowed to have a squishy? This is something that you don't have to worry about that because it's under their desk and they can't see it unless they're crawling on the floor. But that's a whole different thing. Here's an activity I like to do, things that we need to think or things that we say. A lot of times these like ADHD kids will blurt and after the fact they'll be like, ooh, that was not the right thing to say. So a lot of times we'll teach this skill and then we'll talk about thinking it and saying it and just reinforcing it, like that stays in your bubblegum machine. Like we're not gonna let that come out the way that you said that. We can find a better way to have it come out or a better way to express it. But teaching them that kind of regulating, that executive function, should I say this? Shouldn't I say this? So there's lots of good activities that you can do. Find on Teachers Pay Teachers, lots of free resources there. And the last one is like if you have little kids, on the back it's like, here are my 3 goals for my little kid. I can sit. Oh man, carpet time can be bad. Some kids like want to just crawl all over. I can listen to my teacher, and I can keep my hands and feet to myself. Those are the 3 goals that this child will be working on. And they have an awesome race car on the front. And if during the day, maybe the goal is just for the morning, like, hey, if they can do these 3 things from 8 to noon, that's a win. We just move the wheel down here, and then if they get all 3 wheels, they know that they're working for the most coolest thing in a teacher's room, the treasure box. The treasure box. So then they know that they get to pick from the treasure box if they meet their goals. It's a nice, again, visual cue of what they're supposed to do, which is really helpful for them. A lot of times it'll keep a kid on task because they'll remember what they're working for. And you can switch out like what they're working for. Some kids just want like an extra recess sticker. Stickers are huge. Play-Doh. So you can just do lots of things to kind of keep them motivated. So these are some of the things I use. I wanted to give you guys some time to kind of walk up here, see it. It's varying for age levels. It's also varying for what's going on within their ADHD. I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll talk about comorbid diagnoses with ADHD. Exercise that can also be helpful. But all of those are currently being used.
Just think about the pencil thing, like when I was in grade school, how many kids
Tapped?
Well, not tapped, but just
ate it. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's like a real thing. Some people are like, kids don't do that. I'm like, oh, kids do crazy things. Yeah. Yeah, and it breaks my heart too because I'm like, that cannot be healthy. You know what I mean? It's not, I get it's not lead anymore, but I mean, that's not supposed to be digested.
Look them up on Amazon.
What was that?
Do you have like a written list of?
And the other thing is up here on the screen, there are a ton of accommodations I have listed up here. I'm just going to pass that. Whoop, I'm sorry, my mask fell down. I'm just going to pass that list on to your pastor for attentive and hyperactive, because it is a long, long list. And it's a long list on purpose because, like I said before, every kid is going to respond differently. Sometimes I've given, like, I'll see this one kiddo. I mean, his bum is like moving in the seat, and he's sitting on his, you guys see him like sit on their leg and stuff like that, and then they're just like boop, 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 and also next thing you know, they fall out of their chair. I'm like, okay, well, this isn't working. So then I thought, oh, I'll give him one of those discs to sit on. It kind of like inflated with some air, and it has like little bubbles on it. I thought, this is win. I nailed it. No, that was too stimming for him, and like it was like in his hands, and he was like hugging and squeezing it. I was like, this is not working for this child. So something that like you have to remember is you got to try something, and if it's not working, it's okay to say that wasn't successful and try something different, because there are just going to be certain things that meet the needs for some kids and not others. So I'll be sure to send that list on to pastors, that way you guys can see them. Otherwise, you can always go on to the internet, and there's a good resource for a lot of parents, educators. It's like ADD, and they have a magazine that comes out too, and I subscribe to that because I just really, sometimes I need to have those new ideas come to me. Sometimes you're staring at like accommodations and modifications, trying to meet this kid's need. I've gone through like 10, 15 different accommodations, and I'm just not nailing it, and I'm just too close to it, and I just read a new article on different accommodations, and oh, I never tried that one. Or another website I like is pbisworld.com, and you type in the behavior you are seeing, and you type in how long you've been seeing it, and it spits out a ton of interventions And they have them even tiered off, like here are the first interventions you should try, and then tier 2. If you tried those interventions and they weren't successful, go to tier 2. And if you tried those interventions and they're not successful, go to tier 3. So it's really cool because sometimes it can be very defeating when you've tried a lot of different things to help a kid. So trying a lot of these in different combinations will be successful. You can go to the next slide. And the other side should be my hyperactive ones as well. The one thing I really hope that you guys would do for at home or at school is please ignore the minor behaviors. If you nitpick any child to death about little things, you know that they're going to explode. And now let's take a child that we know lags in self-regulation and nitpick them. That is going to dysregulate them. So please pick your battles and choose to ignore some behaviors that, of course, you would love and hope that eventually in treatment and the things that you're doing with them, you will get to someday, but you cannot tackle them all at once. That's why, right, we have 3 behaviors on there. Does that child that I'm working with have more than 3 behaviors we want to address? Of course. Of course. I'm going to take the 3 right now that usually involve safety is the top priority. So I have to use my executive functioning and think, what are the most important behaviors that we address right away? And say, well, we're going to have to let it go that sometimes she will click with her mouth. And then eventually we will get there when we can tackle that she's not crawling around the carpet and touching every child on the carpet. So you kind of have to learn how to pick your battles and address the behaviors you want to address. All right, you can click through. Okay, so this is when you hear some of these things, you go, yeah, that sounds like this kid, but I see something a little bit different with them. That's because we know for ADHD, a lot of times they are comorbid. They are with another, they're often, not always, but often, a dual diagnosis. ADHD, anxiety, ADHD, learning disorder, ADHD, depression, ADHD, autism. Those things can a lot of times go hand in hand. Again, not always. There's never an always and never unless you're talking about Jesus. But they can go hand in hand, and they often do go hand in hand. So if you're saying this kind of hits on my kid that I'm thinking about, but not totally, it could be because there's something else going on with them. And that's when you really have to rely on your medical team to be addressing all of them at once, because they can have different medicine. How many of you guys have heard of anxiety? Yep. Depression. ODD. Okay. A lot of times it's like mainly educators that hear about ODD. It's like a defiant child, not like neurologically defiant, not like preteen, the kid that's like, I roll. Like diagnosably neurologically defiant. That's ODD. And then the newer diagnoses that a lot of people aren't hearing about, but just starting to learn more about, and we're learning more about in the counseling world, and schools are going to start hearing this more, as a DMDD. Has anyone heard of this one? All right, Disruptive Mood Dysregulation Disorder. This is for our kids that sometimes they get called firecrackers. They light that fuse and it goes off, and it is whoa. It is like, wow, that escalated quickly. I did not see that happening. What happened? He broke his pencil, and so he flipped his desk. Okay, that would be like something that could happen with somebody that is disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. They cannot regulate their moods, and a lot of times when they cannot, it leads to high escalating behaviors in a classroom. So this is something that I'm starting to hear more about. I know children that have been diagnosed with it, but it's something that is important for us to wrap our brain around and understand, because I think we get in a box of ADHD, anxiety, depression, ADHD, anxiety, depression, but there are other things that can be factors in this, like bipolar and other mood disorders can also go along with ADHD. So it can play differently and look differently with different things. So it's always important to have a medical team with that, addressing it. The other thing is, when it comes to ADHD, it does change with age. It can look different with every phase of life for children. So I can write an accommodation plan, and it might not stick for the next school year because it can look different. Their ADHD can look different as they mature. So that's something and also sometimes because they're being more successful, and we're going to move on to new skills. So never just pigeonhole into these accommodations. It always should be a constant conversation. All right, you can hit that. The other thing is, if they are dual diagnosed and they are on medicine, it is really important you are working with the child's doctor on a consistent basis of medicine and amounts, because it can become, like I said, very dysregulated, especially when you start talking about preteen, adolescent. What are they getting huge batches of at that age? Hormones. And so that can play factors that we need to keep working with our medical team on how their medicine is reacting with all the body changes that is going on. And I know kids do not like hearing stuff like that, but it's true. It's true. Their chemicals in their body are changing, and we need to adapt with that. And remember that that's something, when you see a new behavior or you see something, are you seeing it over time? Are you seeing it often? How long have you been seeing it? And what is my next step? What is this behavior accomplishing? Do I need to talk to a doctor about it? So those are the kind of things that it should be a constant conversation with, like, here are the behaviors we're seeing. Here's how we're trying to address it. Here's how we're successful or not successful. What do you think? And talk to the team about it. All right, so here are some of the things that it can be commonly with sleep disorders. Does anyone know anyone with ADHD that struggles to sleep? Like, they just can't go to sleep. And then sometimes the kids, oh my goodness, they look so tired at school. And yet they're moving, and you see that they're tired. And then it can become chronic, and then it just can get all sorts of wild. Like, think about us without sleep, and then have your brain never letting you shut down. That's awful. Talk to your doctor about it. Talk to your doctor about it. If it's at a level where you need medical, like a doctor to talk to you about it, find out ways to solve it that way. Other things, please limit screen time. They should not be looking at a screen. This is like the worst habit, and I will admit I am a part of this bad habit, looking at my phone before bed. That is not good for your brain. It's not good for your eyes. And in 2020, when everybody is very emotional right now and very heated, don't go on social media right before bed. That is not a healthy place to be before bed. If you're going to be doing anything on your phone, read your Bible, read a book, color. There's even like apps where you can do those, like adult coloring books. But if you feel like that's something you need to do, otherwise do that in person. But give your eyes a rest. Give your brain a chance to stop being stimulated. This is so important. You should at least have an hour before bed without screens. But especially for an ADHD child, letting the phone be by the bed. Sometimes they will just be on it, and they don't want to be on it, but they're on it, and they're on it. And again, they lose track of time, and next thing you know, it's 1 a.m., and they have school the next day. So don't just allow for electronics to be like out there if you know that that could be a reason why their sleep is so affected. But it can be with actual sleep disorders. Learning disorders, like I talked about, substance abuse, alcohol and drug dependence. Unfortunately, I have seen children that they were doing so well that they felt like they didn't need their medicine anymore, so they stopped taking it. And I always have to remind children that up until the age of 25, you don't have a fully developed brain, and that's why your parents, God gave you your parents, to help you make wise decisions till your brain is fully developed, even though you can leave the house at 18. But it's really important that we remember that you're probably being successful because you're on a medicine. But sometimes that can, when we're off medicine, when you're in preteen, it can lead to like experimenting with substances, and that can be very dangerous and very slippery. It can be very addictive for children, but think about if you feel overwhelmed often by your ADHD, and you start taking a substance, like a drug substance, and you feel like it helps. What does an undeveloped child's brain think? Oh, this is working for me. This is great. That's not healthy. No, that's not regulated. No, that's illegal. But children's brains aren't fully developed, and so they make foolish choices. So I have worked with several students that stopped working their treatment plan, stopped using their resources, and started leaning on more controlled substances. And it can be a very dangerous, slippery slope, because remember, they're impulsive. And so we want to help them get through that whole, you need to stop and think, what are the consequences of this? And a lot of times they're not thinking about the consequences, man. They're thinking about a good time. And you have to help them. We have to help neurotypical children do that stuff. But we also have to help our ADHD children think through that. One of my students really struggled. His drug of choice was LSD because he really liked, he said it was very psychedelic. And I was like, boy, you were born in like 2000 something. Like, you do not know what psychedelic means. But he felt like the drug made colors more vibrant and things cooler. And he said, felt like I, for the first time, didn't have a care in the world, and I didn't have to think about, I can't do my homework, I feel dumb, I don't like this, like I don't like how I feel, I don't like who I am. And I was like, well, so there's the illegal way that leads to arrested, felonies, drug time, or we could go and do treatment. And it took a while, but he did do treatment, and it's actually really awesome because he ended up graduating on time, and he was super credit deficient. But he started to work the plan, and he said he would have to fight that voice that would be like, it's not a big deal if you just do it one more time, because that is something inner voices say, right? Teenagers think like, that won't be me. When you say like, I know kids do this, and they're like, Mom, that's not gonna be me, that's not gonna be me. Well, it is somebody, and it happens very, very quickly. And so I just really think it's really important that you get treatment right away, you stay on it consistently, and you work the plan through and through to help try to curtail a child from trying to find their own way to cope with ADHD or anything that might be comorbid with it, because it can happen very, very quickly. But he did graduate, and it's actually really cool. He started working with the drug unit for our county to help them learn how quickly and easily drugs were distributed in schools, so that way they could help keep schools cleaner. It was so cool. It was what an opportunity. What a gift this child had, and his struggle. God used his struggle to like help like other students not have access to these things, so they couldn't impulsively do something. It was really cool. Really proud of that kiddo. And like I said, anxiety and personality disorder. But all that, again, you have to work with your medical team on that. If your pediatrician says, I don't know, then you need to say, all right, can you please refer me to go get a neuropsych for my child? Or this child needs a neuropsych done. Neuropsychs are not done in schools. They're done by psychologists, neuropsychologists, and hopefully children neuropsychologists. But you want to advocate if you're feeling like we're not hitting it totally. You want to advocate to get that neuropsych done early, because the wait list, at least from where we are, is about 9 months to a year to get a neuropsych, because they're so backed up. So if you feel like something is very comorbid and it's not being treated very well, and you've worked with your team on it and it's still not answering, then you might need to go to the next kind of level of testing in psychology, which would be like a neuropsych. Some of this testing is available through Christian Family Solutions as well, which is awesome, because you can work with some amazing doctors. All right, you can hit the button. Oh, okay, so here this. This is actually for adults. These are some of the statistics on adults that can happen. Major depression. You can see even bipolar on here, post-traumatic stress, PTSD, panic disorder, any other substance use. So it's really important for us to always acknowledge if you feel like they're not hitting everything and there's something else going on, say that out loud. I feel like we're just not hitting it all. Like, what's going on here? Ask more questions. The more questions you ask, the more you're going to explore and research to try to find a way to help. Help the person, help the child, help the student, help your grandchild, help your niece, nephew, whatever it is. Help yourself. Help yourself. If you feel like I am ADHD, but I also feel like I get these anxious stomach aches, I feel like it might be anxiety as well. You gotta do that due diligence to yourself to get those questions kind of answered and seek out the right help. And a lot of times you can start by going to a counselor or a doctor.
Kristen, what do the percents mean?
What'd you say?
What do the percents mean?
Percentage of people that are comorbid. So the person has ADHD, but 18% of people with ADHD have, 18% have depression. And then this is youth.
That is what?
Youth.
Oh, youth, okay.
So, it does happen where a lot of times these things can ebb and flow. The other thing that I see happening more and more, social media is can be really toxic for my ADHD children. My children in general, let's be honest, children in general, social media is not the best for right now because they're, again, underdeveloped brain. Their brain is not fully developed, so they say things on social media, think they're really funny, and then they're not funny in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the school, in the eyes of their parents. So if you have a child that is ADHD and you are not monitoring their social media, you go home right away and you research ways that you can help your child curb their social media, because that, my friend, is a footprint in their life that you will never get rid of now. Even on Snapchat, I don't know where kids got this disillusion that like snaps go away because Snapchat tells you it goes away. Ha ha ha, they do not go away. There is a way for police to access those. So never let a child, because remember, they don't have a fully developed brain, think things as fact if they're not fact, because they're not. I see more and more children do impulsive, foolish things that get them in big, big, big trouble with the law, with the school, that have long and lagging repercussions with it. And if parents do their best to monitor, obviously we know if a kid is going to do something, they will find a means and a way. Like my children are not an exemption just because I'm a school counselor and I work in their school and you think I see them 99% of the time. Well, they still get away with stuff because they're sinful creatures, and if they have a will, they will have a way. But I do want to put as many curbs and stop signs and yields along the way as possible to help curb their behavior and give those reminders. So my children don't have phones yet, but we're looking at getting that kind of stuff. And we are really right now examining the technology to monitor it. So that way we can catch what kind of language they're using, what kind of things they're posting, to help them understand, like, boy, stop and think for a minute, right? Executive functioning, they're not thinking things through. Stop and think, if you were Susie, would you think that's really funny what you just said about her on social media? I don't know, maybe. I don't know, I guess, no. Okay, well, what are you gonna do to fix it? That kind of stuff. It gives you an opportunity to help them stop and think and curb that kind of stuff on social media. Because like I said, it can be really damaging within friendships. Or even the kid with ADHD goes, I don't know why Susie's so mad at me. Because they're not picking up all the signals because their brain is working so fast. And they're not thinking about the fact that they posted yesterday, because that's 1,000 thoughts from where they are today, but they posted something kind of mean and kind of made fun of her. Yeah, that's why Susie's mad at you. But they didn't give it that kind of a thought. They didn't think that deeply about it. So allowing that time to process like what happened is really, really important. And you're helping them empathize, because screens don't always create the empathetic side of children, right? Because I can say what I want on social media. I don't have to see your face. I don't have to see your reaction to what I say. So teaching them how to establish that ability to not see somebody but feel what they might feel is really important. All right, any other questions? Awesome. All right, you can flip to the next slide. I talked about so much information, and I thought, man, if I'm gonna drive down, I'm just gonna like give it all I got. So anything, any tool up here, anything, you can email me. That's my school email. You can email me and be like, hey, there's this ball, it's squishy. They're like, can you send me a link for that? Yep, absolutely, because you know what? I probably ordered that on Prime. Or I could tell you like how people made some of the marble stuff, or any of the books, or anything else, or if you need to run anything past me. I'm absolutely here and available via internet, I guess, to help you guys out with any of this stuff. ADHD is very, very treatable, but it's so important we educate ourselves from every seat on the bus, because it is not hopeless or helpless or anything like that. It's just something that we have to learn, that if a child is different, like neurotypically, than a neurotypical child, we have to adjust on how we use our fully developed brains, because we're older than 25, to help a brain that's still developing. So we have to remember that we don't want to join in their chaos and dysregulate ourselves when they're dysregulated. We want to be like, I have a fully developed brain. I have a fully developed brain. I'm going to use every bit of my brain, even if they're not, right? Because they're developing their brain still. And so the things that we say and the things we do make a difference. And the other thing is, I'm a firm believer in what you say to your kid is how they think about themselves. So ADHD, it's like heartbreaking when ADHD kids sometimes talk about themselves. Listen to how they talk about themselves. Sometimes they can be really nasty to themselves, like, oh, I'm just stupid, I don't get it. Don't allow that kind of self-talk, because if that's how we talk to ourselves out loud, that internal dialogue is going on, and we want to correct that. We want to correct that. You are not stupid. But it looks like we need to attack this problem from a different way. Where are you getting stuck? How can I help you? Looks like you need a break. Can we take a break? You know, that kind of stuff. Helping guide them along in that journey, but don't let that self-talk be there, and don't let your talk support negative self-talk. Do not say things that are damaging to self-esteem in front of them. even if you're like, I am so frustrated, there's a way to express yourself and express your frustration without saying something that can really be damaging to them and make them feel like there's something really, really wrong with them that can't be fixed. But words are so powerful that way that we have to remember that they can't regulate their emotions, but we can. So we have to be very careful with the things we say about a child because they can be self-fulfilling prophecies that way. So if we frame things like, yep, we can do this, we can do this, we can tackle this, there's nothing we can't do, we're gonna get a team together. Boy, that's framing it like we're gonna rock this out, there's solutions. Even if you don't know the solution, there's solutions. Or if you say like, I don't even know what to do. I don't even know what to do with you anymore. I don't know what to do with you anymore. That is not helpful. That tells the kid you've got nothing to offer, you're not on their team, and they can't reach out to you for a resource. So if those are some frustrations you're having, practice a nice hot cocoa breath, breathe in, smell that hot chocolate, and blow it slowly out. And just kind of, okay, I need a minute because I'm getting frustrated. I'm going to take a break. But the messages you send a child with something like ADHD, anxiety, depression does make a difference in how they view themselves. So be an involved team member, but a positive one. Any questions? So much information. All right, I will hang out as I pick up all my stuff. If you guys have any questions you want to ask. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for coming out here tonight. Thank you.